1983 Honda VF750 Interceptor. It was sort of like the modern, first generation of the modern sport bike, like the sport bike that we come to know nowadays. Prior to that, you know, they would take a regular inline 4 and slap a little bit fairing on it and bigger center brakes and call it a sport bike. This was the first bike that was actually built as a sport bike, and you know, had 16-inch front wheels and a bunch of other stuff to make it kind of cool. And it was actually designed so it could be raced in superbike, and it was pretty successful. I remember my buddy and I used to play pool because we were too young to go to the bars, and he mentioned he saw this really cool bike in this one bike shop, which is no longer around, and so he said, let's go take a look at it. So we did, and it was the red and white one, not the blue one that I bought in there, and I just went like, wow. So a couple days later, I went by and talked to the dealer, who was a bit of a jerk. It's one of the reasons why I didn't buy it off of him, and probably one of the reasons why he ended up going out of business. But yeah, the red and white ones were the only ones available. The blue and white were not coming into a later shipment, so I'd have to wait. And it's like, oh, whatever. So I ended up going to a bunch of other dealerships to find out the best price and whatnot, and I ended up buying it from a place that's way out in it's like almost a 45-minute drive away, and they gave me a good deal, and you know, and I got the bike. It was, you know, everything was perfect and whatnot. So he threw in a helmet, which was a big deal because I didn't have one, and that's where I bought it. Now, I couldn't drive it home because I didn't have a motorcycle license. I hadn't even taken the written test yet, and my buddy who had ridden a motorcycle but didn't bother getting a license, and he drove it home for me. Yeah. Just turn in front of me. So, we got it home, took it up and down the street a couple times, went, like, it was cool, and it looked like it was going to rain, so I went to go put it back in the garage, and I went to put it in the garage, I dropped it, and basically I was moving it in, and it just got to the balance. Well, the bikes back then were actually very tall and top heavy. You pick up a modern bike, the weights are nowhere near as bad as they were back then, and what you ended up with when I dropped it, I ended up scraping the fairing a little bit at the end of the brake lever and clutch cover. So I bought a new clutch cover. It cost me like $80. The handlebar, the brake lever just got a little bit of black paint, touch it up. The scratch was like minimal, and the fairing I had to buy the Honda paints to you know, hide the scrape on it. If you looked at the bike, you wouldn't notice it, but I knew where it was, so I always saw it. So it was just a reminder for me to be a little more careful with my bikes down the road, and I was. But I think that was it. Rode it all over the place, and well, it was my first bike, so I had no real experience in the other bike, so I had no idea how much better it was than the previous bikes. And just thoroughly enjoyed it. It did have a couple issues because the 16-inch front tires were new. I got a flat and ended up having to wait about 3 weeks for a tire for it because nobody had them. It was just a nail. It wasn't anything to do. It wasn't Honda's fault, that's for certain. It got recalled because the bolts, I guess, that they fastened the clip-ons to the forks with were not hardened enough, or they were too hardened. Anyways, they would snap off, and they got recalled just to replace 2 bolts, which was not a big deal. Other than that, never had a problem with it. The V4 engines that these bikes had, which were in the day pretty revolutionary, had issues with their cams weren't heat treated properly, so they have experienced excessive cam wear, especially if they were revved a lot or not had their oil changed regularly. Mine was a later built version, so I never had the problem. My buddy who I sold the bike to later down the road, he had it, never had a problem with the cams. I do know guys who had 4 or 5 sets of cams put on the bike, but I never experienced it with that bike, and as far as I know, the third person who bought it never had a problem either. I lost touch with it after that, so I had no idea whatever happened to it. You know, got great gas mileage, started every time, rode really well. Learned a very important lesson is you do not armor all the seat on that motorcycle. You know, there's all the things you sort of learn, and if you survive, it's knowledge you can pass on to other riders. They don't put armor all in your seat on a sport bike, because first time it happened, I slid back, like, it was only a couple inches, but it felt like 2 feet. It scared the crap out of me. So it's like something you don't do. The mirrors on it were for what it was, a sport bike, were actually very good, unlike most sport bikes now, which give you an excellent view of your elbows. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I kept it for 2 years. I used it as my daily commuter, never really had a problem. Had a lot of fun riding it, learned a lot. And for a new rider, like an 86 horsepower 750 V4 was kind of overkill, but you could say the same thing nowadays about people buying 600 cc's, 100 plus horsepower 600s for new riders. But I survived. It's sort of a mental thing more than the bike won't kill you. You will kill yourself on the bike. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was my first bike. You know, like your first bike, you always have usually pretty fond memories of it, unless it's a total piece of crap. And I still do. You know, if I was a multi-millionaire, I'd still have it, because it was just something neat to remember. Rush hour. So, anyways, that's pretty well all I got to say. Bike number 1. Hope you enjoyed it.